moment, and then you are like a cicada holding onto a tree in a hurricane for its dear life. Dear life. Dear life. And this is what it would be like walking on eggshells. Now, I said I'm a gingerly walker, and that might have been a cover for how many eggshells that the ginger had been apparently found at hard edges with. And so when you tear like your ACL, but then you get like grafting of an ACL, and then oh, yo, hey, window. Hey, would you enforce quarantine mandates? Oh, that's terrible, man. You know, I'm not pointing my finger at the left, but then allowing that domestic terrorist and then having the conservatives not be able to open their mouths. And so that's one arc. There's two more arcs where the news, they go outside and they cover on location, so it grabs people's attention because most people are visual learners. And so it's more interesting in going to a location and speaking on that behalf. The third arc is just the loss of appeal in the raw data, because it's not on the behest of being able to see it in a physical place or in having a point system. If you buy like $1 off and you've got 12 points and you don't know if it's like 1 point or 2 point per drink, that's a huge difference. That's speaking on behalf, that's a whole double between 1 and 2 if the person giving the points, allotting them, doesn't know the difference. But even more so, you can quantize that and get more crafty and intricate. And this is where sand is like in line with how many stars in the universe. It would actually be as like, okay, there's like 1 point per drink, maybe 2. But then what if the drink is so prolific? And this is where the Rosetta Stone actually becomes the keystone in a drink. And then you take it aside and you fix it even better. That doesn't even matter to the points if they're 1 or 2. But it should. That's all this slack jawing that people in the chairs and cabinets on top of boards are able to do with ease. Meaning holding candlelight ceremonies just for virtue signals on the steps of like these fantastic buildings that cost millions of dollars that we provided for them, is gatekeepers allowed by their lackeys. This officer would say he would enforce a mandate, a quarantine. A quarantine is when you're on house arrest. And if you're doing that, and it's not the land of the free, it's the land of the wimps, because your home is enforced by a gatekeeper. Gonna be cool right now. I know what this is. It's all quantizations. And how much is their girth to give? The loudest trucks on the road don't even matter if they're being overthrown, and then the supply chain collapse shortly after that, like throwing a rock in a glass house. And that's why they want to ban and take away firearms, so that you disarm anyone who's in their house who wouldn't want to be in their house because they're being kept captive. how linear dynamics can be confused for vertical integration. In physics, nothing is at a standstill because everything is that exciting. Alright, I just found this tool on the road, and this is exactly what I was trying to explain this whole time. The ground, absolutely terrified. So it's with precaution that please brace yourselves. This material could get a bit graphic. It's almost as seen with this tool bit at its nose. Arcs, they pick up an extra range of motion. What was the S curve? The angular momentum is actually enhanced when it has a longer stem built up. With pressure, you know, how many times does your head get a headache? Well, that's pressure built up, especially if your blood is boiling. I talked to an officer earlier. I didn't like his answer. Things that, without a shadow of a doubt, usually cast blame for what it isn't. When there's light being shed on things, there's one thing's for certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that its back end would be that of a shadow play. What's one way of having aimless accuracy and then not being called for what it is? If you are not the sharpest tool in the shed, but you are trying to strike while the iron's hot, I would argue that that is more sensible than being told you're not the sharpest tool in the shed and then being put up against a product that is never finished. A product that is never finished could be something as aimless as an accuracy of trying to fight something that isn't real. So an imitation is the grandest form of flattering, but if we're made in the image of God, how much is it if what's commonplace is dirt? It's just like to see anemone. And so this is what clownfish hide in, because clownfish aren't good at swimming. So if they're hiding in it, they're able to have a vice. But what if the entire ocean floor was full of anemone? Then all the clownfish wouldn't have to swim because they would always be safe. And so then they would get worse at swimming because they wouldn't need to. They would always be hiding in there. And so when they come back from vacation, they can have a full head of steam and not be walking on eggshells because they go right to their office, shut the door, and know that the whole time that they were on vacation, they weren't pontificating over what is good because they know that, well, this is what is great for my party. And that's the best shot that the future of humanity has. And so, you know, what virtue signals, but only to be able to quantize the value of their office desks, the marble floors, the great ropes of velvet that people are supposed to walk inside of. And then you can quantize all these to actual values to call out anything that they're doing as a miscalculation, if it actually is one. And so the more that cops are just playing like a nanny state for an adult being told as though they were a kid to go back home. And then you've got these politicians that are able to go out because they've got a hall pass. They would be at hair salons getting their hair with all these fine crimpings and dyes because they say they're a public figure. They're allowed to. A public figure that needs to be perceived adequately. You know, being fashionably late, but then only to go on TV, have people only allowed in a room if they've been assigned a question. Once the question's been asked, then reading off a cue card the answer, as if you needed to get dolled up and gussied up for that is an embarrassment to the human species.